Hey, besties, welcome to another edition of the Bestie Advice. I am your host, Irene Abrams, and I'm here with my bestie, Karan. Hey, Karan.
Hey, Irene. Hey, besties out there.
We are so excited about our show, about this season. This season, we are talking about upgrading your entire life. And today's show is no different. I am very excited to have my pastor, my bishop, and first lady, Bishop Virgil C. Brackett and Lady Ira Brackett on as our guest. And Kiran and I, when we was discussing like what topics we wanted to upgrade, marriage was definitely one of the topics that we had to discuss. And when we were going through the list of guests, it was just a no-brainer. We had to have Bishop and we had to have Lady Brackett. Now, let me say, Kiran and I have known both of them for a long time. And my husband and I was talking today, and I've always said over 20 years. And my husband was like, baby, it's coming up to 30 years. I was like, oh, Lord Jesus.
We just
Tell
talking
me.
about that.
Just
It is
saying
coming up to
Yeah.
30 years. And I will say both of them have always been the same since I have known them. I feel like we've grown up together. We've seen the different sides of each other, from marriage to having kids, everything. We ran the gamut. And I am so honored to be a daughter in the ministry. I absolutely adore Bishop Brackett and how he treats his wife. If you guys could sit in our congregation, I am a romantic at heart. So I gush at the things that he says to his wife. It is so authentic. And then when she talks about her husband, it is so pure. And I think that when we end this conversation, all you married couples, take out your pen and paper, be ready to take some notes. You're going to
Yes.
learn a thing or two, not only about them, but how to upgrade your marriage. It is my pleasure and my honor to have, for the first time on our podcast, my bishop and my first lady. Bishop, let me say this. Bishop is the bishop of Rhema Word Church on the west side of Chicago. We are located 5460 West Ohio. You are welcome to come and join
Oh,
us.
Lord.
We're on Facebook, we're on YouTube. No, I'm just joking. But he does, and he's been the pastor. It will be 30 years next year, the pastor of our church, and he's only the second pastor. And so I want to get into some good questions because he's truly a man of valor. He's a man that's loyal.
Yes.
He's a man after God's own heart. And his wife is an intercessor of God. I know when she prays, she gets the ear of the Lord. So I am so excited to have both of them. So, Lady K, I'm going to toss this over to you because I will be talking about them for the whole podcast, right? So I want to toss it over to you. Let's just start. Like, what do we want to know? We got them on the podcast. What do we want to know when it comes to upgrading our marriage?
Yes. Finally, we have gotten Bishop Brackett and Lady Ira on our podcast. Again, I just want to welcome you all and thank you all for accepting our
Yes,
invitation.
thank you.
So we're going to just jump right on in with our initial question. So when you think about upgrading or improving your marriage, what does that mean to you, Bishop Brackett? What does that mean to you, Lady Ira?
Oh, Lord. Oh, Lord. We done made it. We done made it. We on the
That's
Bestie
enough.
show. Thank you all for inviting us. You know, we are
Absolutely.
family, and
Absolutely.
we're grateful for the connection, for the relationship, all that we've experienced together as it
Absolutely.
relates
Yes.
to our lives as well as to ministry. To the question at hand, upgrading is, you know, upgrading. My initial thoughts was how to make it better, how to make it stronger. And the components of that often have to do with more of what is internal than external. The external elements of upgrading your marriage really are just a byproduct of, or the result of, what is going on internally, the investment that's going on, not in the other person prior to your own personal investment in yourself. Me bringing a better me to my marriage helps my marriage. So before
That's
it is anything having to do with how can I help, my wife be better, I need to know how do I work toward being a better me so that I can offer her the best of me.
wow.
So, that dynamic of how do I upgrade me? And that,
That's good.
that's pretty complex in itself. You know what I mean? So and I've always said that, the uniqueness of what it takes for you when you talk about marriage, you're talking about the acceptance of another person, where two personalities from two different places
Yes.
are merging together and doing life together. And all that stuff is gooey and it is sweet and all that at the altar.
Yeah,
But now we got to go home. We got to
absolutely.
live together. We got to, I often talk about, when we first got married, we wasn't married. I think we probably had just come off the honeymoon
Yeah.
even. And I am a sitcom guy. So the way my nights ended, they ended with shows like Frasier. These young folk don't know nothing about Frasier. So Frasier was how I would wind
Understand.
down in the
Yeah.
evening and all that. And I get this person coming home with me now at night in my space, and I got on Frasier, and she trying to figure out what is this we watching and why. No, 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 no. This part of my this how I wind it.
Right.
So that dynamic of, again, being able to bring the better me, and having to do that entails a lot. So yeah, yeah, investing in myself.
That's
Yeah, that's good.
Yes.
kidding.
So what about
Lady
you,
B?
Lady Brackett? What do you think?
I concur with Bishop wholeheartedly. Um, Again, when I hear the word upgrade, as Lady K mentioned, improvements on self, and then taking that assessment on the complexities of what marriage entails, and then the different things that, as Bishop mentioned, that I can do to enhance and to bring a better me to the table. And that takes some self-evaluation. That takes some hardcore questions to assess and to have these hard conversations as to what's necessary, what's needed. How can I bring a better me? It causes me to now engage my husband to see what it is that he's looking for, not necessarily to change who I am, but also to have a better understanding of what it is to have that camaraderie together because of the what our lives entail, not just marriage, but we're married to the church as well.
Mhm.
So it's important that we have this foundation where we have this understanding of what's needed and what's necessary to continue to mesh the two together.
I
I,
like
That's
that.
good.
what
That's good.
resonates
Go
in
ahead.
there with Ira, Lady B or Ira talking about, that those hard questions.
Yeah.
I am the first to admit, and I think most men, if we're talking about, upgrading and really being able to bring our best self into our marriage, that is one of the most challenging things, at least for me as a man.
Yeah.
Coming into the marriage, I was a single man. Growing up, I grew up in church. I was always around a church, that whole dynamic, and that ultimate thing of, very independent, very sought after, and sought after in a way where, in all modesty, sought after where, other young ladies were in pursuit of me. And then now to be living with this one person who I love and who I want to spend the rest of my life with, but at the end having to be able to have those kind of conversations that have to do with what needs to change with me, not with her.
Right.
What is no longer tolerable now that you are married, or what are the things that are part of who I've been up till the age of 25,
Mhm.
that, at the end, now coming into, what was it, 30, we were 30 years old when we got married, that now those behaviors are no longer going to be helpful as a married man to this
Yeah.
particular woman who comes with a different background,
Absolutely.
no church background and all of that. What internal work do I need to do? And so I think a lot of times for men in particular, those are the things that we have a tendency to run from, I guess is the way,
Yeah.
where we don't initially embrace that right away.
Yeah.
And for me, I think if I could go back and get a do-over in those years of my life, it'd be like being able to embrace that a little sooner, to understand the dynamics of how it only benefits you. I've always lived by the philosophy, if she's treated as a queen, the queen that she is, then my treatment is automatically, because a queen only has a king.
That's good.
Yeah, I know that is good.
Yeah.
And Kirana, we love to hear like the male perspective. Go ahead, Kirana.
No, I just wanted to say, because y'all said a whole lot and all of it was good. But just thinking about, as far as with improving, you saying as far as improving yourselves on an individual basis. So how, I just want to ask this question. It wasn't on my list, but just because y'all said it, how important is it to improve yourselves prior to saying I do? Because yes, we can improve ourselves throughout, but how important is it to take the steps to improving yourselves before you say I do?
Absolutely.
For me, that's vital.
Yeah.
To who you bring to the altar. Because if I had not been confident in who I was as a woman, I wouldn't have been able to handle what came with Bishop. Because as everybody know, I didn't come from the church. I saw a lot. I was engaged in a lot prior to marriage. However, as a woman, as an individual, I knew who I was. I was just learning the church side of that. And so even with that, there was another element to who I was that I had to learn and be comfortable with. And that was part of the process of us dating, me being confident in who I was bringing to this man who had all of this baggage, things that came along with him as far as the church. And as he stated, there were women that were doing things to, get his attention. And so once we crossed that line and we became one, I was confident in the protection that he gave me and the assurance that that's something that he was able to handle, causing me to be more comfortable in the role of a wife, because certain things he didn't stand for. I was always given this platform where I was always respected because I gave respect. I was always he always showed respect to me in relations to the other women. He never made me feel like I had to do things to get his attention to make him know. He always covered me. And so those were issues that I never had to deal with. Thank God, this 20, plus years later, I've never had to deal with that because my husband, covered me and took care of me and allowed me to grow and to come into who I was prior to marriage and even in marriage. Because again, I had a lot to learn. I had a lot to learn, a lot to intake, and I was given that space and that grace to be able to come into who I was and not who everybody else thought I should be.
That's good.
And another thing in there, I think that where most time is missed is in the while I'm waiting period, because it's the while I'm waiting period that should be the prep period. And prep in making me better. And it depends on the perspective, because I think a wife should be found opposed to searching. And in the period of me being preparing myself to be found, there is a level of work that the woman does that I think that it can't be dictated to, while she can be exposed to it in the realm of simple things, general things that have to do with, financial stability, credit, your health and your well-being and all of that. But by the same token, the male who is the one that's in pursuit, and I can speak from, experience from the pursuing part, because, I did pursue, convince, fast and pray, and pursue and convince and fast and pray some more. But that's a whole nother story. But in there, it's that, again, that individual work, because now in coming together, who I am will impact her, from my credit, from my what I encourage couples to do now: do a criminal background check. Do a credit background check. What's the health? Because you're going to have children. And now when you're talking about, that two flesh become one, that ain't just a spiritual matter. Your credit is going to be merged together.
Yes.
Okay. Your health is going to be impacted, because if you create a life, that's the DNA from the both of you running in those boys of ours. And so having to be able to look at that perspective, the element of, some women are loose when it comes to money. So it's like, you might want to get yourself together in that way. And I'll share a real quick story. One of the things about Ira that was always like, I don't get this about this girl, is shopping wasn't her thing. Even to this day, we have been together for 29 years. 24 of those years we've been married. We dated about 5 years. Everybody that thought they knew who I was dating, all that stuff, they lying, they ain't know. But anyway, and so she's never been this, going to the mall, shopping, doing all that. Even when I would encourage her, babe, you need to go get you some clothes, get some stuff. Never, never, never. However, this particular weekend, the holiday weekend just passed. Thanksgiving had passed, and Black Friday. And for me, Black Friday is normally a typical time. I'm going to be out. I just like to be in the hustle and the bustle, watching people act silly and do all that kind of stuff. When I tell you, this wife of mine shocked me to no end all day long. Babe, what you doing? I'm spending my money. And it's like, but for me, not one time did I ask how much you spending. Not one time is like, okay, that's good. First and foremost, because that's not her norm. If she had a shop the whole day and spent all the money we ever had and put away, it still would have been okay, because at the end, the discipline that she's had over 29 years is like, have at it. But again, bringing that came from just the type of person she was. So all those things need to be considered, because everybody's going to be affected by what the other person brings to the table.
Yeah.
That was one of the things. I had my own car. I had my own place. I had my own morals and values as a woman. So again, those were things that, I had A1 credit. So these were things that I brought to the table that helped, to add and enhance our marriage.
I love that. And I know your story of coming together. But can you share with our audience? So Bishop was in ministry. He grew up in the church. He and I have very similar backgrounds. It's crazy when I hear him talk about his life. Just growing up in church all day, all night, being a part of a family that your mom is going to take you to church. And then Lady Brackett is like my husband. Very, very, very similar stories. He didn't grow up in church. So I was his first church girl. I don't know how that sounds, but anyway.
You're the only church girl.
Right. The only church girl, right? But your story is amazing. And so to put it in perspective for our audience, can you just share, how you met at work? And Bishop, you kind of alluded to, you really, you chased her, you found your wife, that God showed you, and you pursued her. And Lady Brackett, can you share kind of your perspective? Because I think it's important for married couples that desire to be married, engaged couples, to see, Lady Brackett didn't come from a Christian home. She came from a home that morals, and values, and she had, God anointed her from the womb to be who she is today. But to just see how God can have people from two different lives come together and build a life together. If you don't mind sharing your testimony, that would be great.
Absolutely, Irene, and I love to share this part of our story, because it's so important to always listen to God. And in that, we worked on Lake Street, and so he worked with me. He came. I had been with the company for like 10 years, and then here comes, Bishop. And I didn't know him at the time. And then I heard him having a conversation with one of my good friends, Lindsay, and I found out he was a preacher. I was like, oh, that guy's a preacher. Oh, I didn't think anything of it. And he was helping someone repair their car. And at the time, my car needed some type of service. So I went to ask, him about the conversation that I overheard him having about helping this young lady. But prior to that, I had dreamed about him like the night before. And I'm like, why am I dreaming about my coworker? So when I went to approach him about the car, I was like, oh, by the way, I had a dream about you. You was in my dreams last night. I don't know what for, but I was like, can you give me the information to help with my car? And the next thing I know, he's coming by my workstation. And at that time, the back of my hair was very long. And he handed me this note, let's stop dreaming, let's make this a reality. And he, touched my hair. And I was like, oh my God. He think I want him. And I was like, I don't want him. And then I always would hear him having these conversations about church with my girlfriend. And so again, I'm from Sidewalk High, nothing about church. And so he invited us to revival on Central, and my girlfriend Melissa and I were supposed to go. And she stood me up. I came and she wasn't there. So I'm just like, she was like, we might as well go. We might as well go, because I wasn't going. I went at her pushing and okay, we're gonna go. Okay. Again, she stood me up, get in the church, and was just blown away with what I experienced, because again, I had no clue of what was going on. They kept ringing this bell, stand up, sit down, stand up, stay on their knees, saying these prayers. I was just like, what is going on? So, I went along, and then I finally see the preacher, and he's preaching his heart out. And it's like, all visitors stand up, come to the front of the church. And I'm like, to the front of the, it was just, again, not a good experience for me. So I came and sat at the front of this church, and he asked me, they opened up the doors of the church, and he said, if you die today, where's your soul going? I said, my what? He said, your soul, if you die today. Because, he's opened up. So I'm just like, my what? He was like, well, you think about that. I'm going to go next. And it was another young lady there. And he asked, I'm just like, my soul, like, what? I'm going to hell. Like, what is that? So now I feel this great conviction. And I joined church that night. And from that day to this one, I continue to go every night to revival. I'm not understanding, but feeling the pull. And had I not given in to that, I would have missed the best thing that ever happened to me. And I say that in all humility and honesty.
Look here, the Lord was in that right there. I felt that. I felt.
And then the pursuit came.
I was already pursuing by the time you came to revival. I was after you from day one.
Yeah.
She would wear this particular dress in particular, a long maroon like sweater dress. And would just be like, okay, so that's what you're gonna do. That's you're gonna wear that to work around me. So that dynamic, but I knew from the first day I saw her, she was gonna be my wife. I from the first day I saw her, I knew she was going to be my wife.
And he said it. And
she didn't, but I knew.
That's not gonna happen.
I knew. She either God gonna make her or I am, but she gonna be my wife. But I knew that that this is the girl I want to be with. And so when I finally wore down to get her to go, at least to go to dinner with me, we went to Red Lobster. That was our first date. She had this tropical-like outfit on. And I was driving one of my mini cars that wasn't the most reliable. I'll never forget it. And we went to dinner and all that, and we were on our way to take her home, and my wonderful car stopped on our first date. Carl McKee, I don't know to this day how he knew where we were. I think he was driving, it was a city truck. I want to say he was driving a city truck at that time, and came from out of nowhere, saw us. Not only did he get our car started, followed me to make sure that it would get me to at least getting her home. And when I tell you, the funniest thing about that first date was, okay, I'm not trying to, get a kiss out the woman like we've been together for 30 years. But I was a peck on the cheek or something. I didn't spend my money, Red Lobster. I'm new. I hadn't been at Ameritech for 10 years. This was my first major job. I think at that time they were paying about $19, $20 an hour to the starters myself. So this is my hard-earned money. So I'm gonna get a little peck on the cheek. By the time I had hit the brake and put the car in park, she was on the porch waving goodbye to me, saying, okay, see you later. Not see you again, just like see you at work or something along that line. And so, but I continued to pursue her, and it was God that affirmed that this was the direction, because she got a call from somebody at work. who prophesied to her that you're dating a preacher. And it was out of that helped to settle her in the sense of knowing that this is the direction that we had. But it's like I was not her type. She was into thugs, earrings,
Yeah.
hood
was.
brothers, hood brothers. And
Limp. With the lamp.
yeah, she wanted them with the limp and all that. And so, I'm this church boy. I'm this church, but I knew this was my wife. And so, as a result, I would take care of our car. Pet Boys was where I would take her car, make sure her car was taken care of.
Yeah.
I would help her with, okay, do you need me to get your groceries? I mean, I was doing whatever I got to do to, because I'm going to win the Oprah.
Right.
He had my attention, but I wasn't all in. I was just, okay, he's just really been aggressive. However, again, that's what I thought in my mind, because again, I'm trying to figure out this church stuff. So that's what drew me, because now we're having these conversations, because I'm just totally clueless. I don't understand nothing. And now you're trying to date me. So like, I'm not trying to do that part. I'm just trying to figure out what I'm supposed to be doing with this. However, it took God sending a customer that I never knew, and I was on the phone with him, and that's when he began to prophesy that you're trying to date a preacher, and he's going to, love you. He's going to, he started, and so that is when I began to give in to, okay, this is God.
Thank the Lord for the prophet. Lord,
Thank God.
That's good. It's funny that even with you all, this light right here is gonna get me. Even with you all sharing your stories, I don't want to use the word opposite attracts. I'm not gonna use that word. I'm gonna say, as far as when we have a list as men and women have lists, because we could say all day, no, it's the women, no, it's the men too. They
right.
have lists, to say how you want them to look, how much money you want them to make, the type of job you want them to have, how you want them to treat you, how you want their mama to be and their dad to be, and all of that. But at the end of the day, it's about who God wants you to be with.
Absolutely.
And even with you giving your testimony, Lady Ira, when you said that particular night at the revival, that the best thing that happened to you that night. Audience out there, two things happened with her. Two. Yes, she came into contact and made that connection with Bishop Brackett, but also accepting Jesus Christ as her Lord and Savior. Yes. I always got to put that in there.
Absolutely.
So two things happened with her. And I love the fact is how you said that, yes, he wanted the relationship, but you're like, hold on, I get that, brother man, but I'm gonna need you to help me with this relationship over here. With this God that you're talking about, this Jesus that you are talking about. Absolutely. I love it. I love you all's testimony. And besties out there, make sure, especially women, girlfriends, friends, girls, don't do the chasing. Let him chase you. Absolutely. You can make your requests known to God. Let God know, hey, God, I want to be married. That's my desire to be married. But at the end of the day, it is your will. Same thing with brothers, men out there. Ask God. Absolutely. Ask him to show you who that woman is that you should be connecting with, because you just don't want to connect with a wife, a man, a woman, a husband, but you want it to be the one that God has for you. So I do have another question for you all.
Absolutely.
Just thinking about, as far as, again, with upgrading your marriage, but for married couples out there, what are some practical ways that you all can give to us on how to upgrade your marriage? What are some of the things that couples should be doing to help with the upgrading and the improving of their marriage?
I would say, keep it fun, keep it, engaging. My husband thinks he's a comedian, so we're always laughing. We're always doing things, to stay connected, from dinner to movies. And it don't necessarily have to be all the time where we, because of our schedules, because of our lives, it's sometimes where we have to create those moments at home, where, you dim the lights, get a throw, put it on the floor, get some popcorn, get some snacks, and have, there's this moment where you're sitting with each other, you're engaging, having those conversations. And then there are other times where you do plan out, those intimate moments where you get away and you steal away, and it's just he and you, having these moments, the movies. It's just, we love spending time, with each other. And sometimes it's not always scheduled or planned, but then other times it is those planned moments where, we're not big on adventure, but getting older, we're reassessing where we are, coming upon being empty nesters, just revisiting some things as husband and wife. But we've always found time to create those moments where it's just he and I, if it's from, just going for a drive or going to the movies, going to dinner, just those intimate moments where it's just he and I, just to, keep it going, and it's not just I'd say one thing. It evolves as your relationship evolves.
I think for me, out of the plethora of things that could be said there, for me it is celebrating each other.
Oh, yeah.
He's big on that.
I
Very big.
to mark those moments, whether it is
Yeah,
birthdays,
very big.
anniversaries, accomplishments, the element of, just at the end of the day, just because, little reminders. It's like, yeah, it's like, I need to have some stock in places for
Yeah,
flowers and things of that nature,
always.
because it's
Yeah.
like, that I always want her to know I don't love her because it's Valentine's Day. I don't love her because it's her birthday. You know, I'm conscious to the degree where I want her to always know how incredible of a mother she is to our children,
Absolutely.
because in my line of work,
Mhm.
the way she holds things down so that I'm able to come. So it's important to me that, my celebrating her is not just by the flowers or even my words. Sometimes it's my acts where,
Yeah.
okay, I've been gone. So
Yeah.
when I come home, okay, she took care of the schedule, whether it's the boys'
Boys,
basketball
yeah.
schedule, dropping off and so she's not gonna have to ask me
Right.
to do that. I'm gonna pick that up automatically because she took care of that and held that down the whole time I was gone. Whether I'm
Dinner,
gone 3 days, I'm gonna cook,
cooking
I'll do
dinner.
laundry, whatever. Because my mama raised us where at the end, you're gonna know how to take care of yourself before you have a
Yeah.
wife. And so in that regard, it's like those are my ways of also celebrating her in that regard. So I think that the ability to always that person knowing their value
Absolutely.
and your appreciation of the value that they have in the relationship, and especially pastorally, I think that it's important for the spouse, because now you have women who are pastors and leading. And with the demand that goes with that, it's so important to make sure that your spouse who is serving with you, though may not be the one up preaching every Sunday, may not be the one that people asking to meet with, but still is impacted and affected by the role that you play. And my wife's ability to make sure that I've got a peaceful home to come to, with that, ain't no contention in here, in the sense of you got to deal with all that out there and then got to come home and it's like, okay, we've been a fuss and argue about, what color paint on the wall. That I've got peace where I can come home and be able to lay my head down and get rest. And so I want to celebrate her for that. So I think the ability to celebrate each other and celebrate each other for everything, no, just, waiting for these particular days. And,
Right.
I can't even keep up with all the ones they create now, but it's like, just the ways that person impacts your marriage, because it's different for everybody.
Right.
Yeah.
And I
So
think
yeah.
that's where it comes in, knowing your partner's love language, and
Absolutely.
lean into that, whatever that is for your partner. And that, again, will make a happy marriage,
Yeah.
practical ways,
Yeah.
like candy brings, I bought you something, so it's always those little things that,
Mhm.
I love
they're
that.
thinking.
Because we had another married couple that came on and they said that they celebrate. I forgot what they said. Then they celebrated something and they said, okay, well, it's Taco Tuesday now. Like,
Exactly.
remember? And it was like they just made
They
it.
said they celebrate everything.
They
Yeah.
celebrate
Yeah.
everything because, like
Yeah.
you both said, with the demand of, Bishop, your work is demanding, and I know, and I've read studies, that being a pastor is one of the hardest jobs you can have. The burnout is much quicker.
Yeah.
It's just a heaviness, being a leader. And then you're not only a pastor, but you're a bishop over, a region, over other pastors, over leaders and things and that can be very stressful.
Yes.
As well, we thank God that he's graced you for that, that
Big
role,
grace.
and you married the perfect person to really help you shoulder that. And so, Lady Brackett, my question for you, because we see bishops work out in the front with the congregation, with other leaders, other pastors, people are constantly pulling on him, and that can be a lot for a person to handle, but you're there at home with him, not only as his friend, as a personal intercessor, as a wife. How do you manage that emotional support that he needs? How do you manage that along with your mother to your children and your
Yeah.
own self-care? But
Mhm.
how do you manage your household? And I'm thinking more not tactically, how do you handle it, but emotionally, how do you manage that?
I would say, first and foremost, staying connected to Holy Spirit, to give me what I need to be able to decompress when necessary, and then staying connected with my husband. We talk a lot and to know what his needs are as well, and just wanting to help, wanting to be that team player to
Yes.
make sure that he has what he needs to be the head of our home. He's our head. And so, as a wife, I want to do all that I can to make sure that he's able to fulfill that role. And knowing my husband, he's always giving me that space when I need, that time to self-care or to do or to go. I have that. I'm not
Yeah.
afraid to say, okay, I need a break. I need to do this. I need to do that, because he gives that, you know, um, freely. It's not
Yeah.
something that I have to, is he gonna get mad if I,
Right.
so I want to make sure that he comes home to a peaceful atmosphere where our children, are now, getting up in age. And now you see the fruit of the labor where my sons are now doing what they can to help out as relates to our household. Caleb comes home, okay, go get your brother, go pick him up because mama got to do this.
Mhm. Yeah.
So we're, a family unit. And so I want to help. I want to be that team player. And in order to do that, again, I would say, much prayer. And then I have the space to do what I need to do to stay on top, to do
Yeah.
self-care, to make sure I get whatever, I like getting my hair done. I have that, oh, you're going to get your, okay. So he knows that I have this time that I'm able to do that, or
Yeah.
time to read or to study or to go to school, because when I was in school, there would be, hours of homework where he would cook, so we have that camaraderie as team players, to today we might have to switch roles, and you
Yeah.
have to know what works for your home. You have to
Mhm.
know what works for you and your marriage. You can't look over there and say, oh, they doing that, let's try that. It may not work that way. So
Yeah.
that's why communication with he and I, well, I know he's had a heavy load. I'm gonna make sure, because cooking is, I don't like it. But yeah, I know he coming off the road, I know I gotta have a meal on the table
Right.
because
Right.
he's been eating
Right.
out all week.
Yeah.
And then he wants to come home and decompress. So I make sure whatever I need to do before he gets here, because now he's going to talk about what happened and,
Mhm.
process. And, so again, it's a schedule, it's a well-oiled wheel that you have to, again, just be that support when necessary, and know how to switch the roles when necessary. You're not just giving 50%, but you're giving 100%. And you have a partner that's giving that the same. I don't mind giving 100%. I don't mind taking the load. My husband is going, because what he's doing, I understand. I'm all in, and I'm not trying to sabotage, my marriage or my
Mhm.
husband, because we're working together as a team.
And,
That's
and
good.
and just let me add that piece because it speaks to what Lady K said earlier on. And this is why it's important for your mate to be God's choice and not yours.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Because when it's your choice, sometimes it's not the compatible one.
Yeah.
It's not the person who understands your role. And especially in the instances where the woman is carrying that load as a
Yeah.
pastoral spiritual leader.
Yeah.
And it takes a unique kind of person to be the spouse
Yeah.
of a pastor, of a
Yeah.
bishop. And and I'm talking about even the spiritual ones.
Yeah.
It takes
Mm-hmm.
a unique, God-called, grace-given person to do life with someone who has the demand of a congregation, who lead other leaders, and that is whether it is the wife that's doing it or whether it is the pastor. And then the element of we're in an era now where a lot of ministry, for those of us who grew up in church, we grew up in church. The wife didn't do nothing in church. You just go over there, put your
Not
hat
really.
on, sit down, and be
Not really.
be
Yeah.
quiet.
Mhm.
Just look pretty on
Yep.
Sunday, you
Yep.
know. And for me, that was one of the things that's like, no, I don't even want us to begin our journey that way. I had the
Yeah.
conversation with our church, she my wife.
Yeah.
She not here for the church.
That
She
cover.
ain't got to do all that stuff. She ain't got to put no hat on, she got to sit in no corner.
Yeah.
By the same token, we're in an era now where the wives are just as engaged and partner in the work of the ministry as well as in the homework. And so that is a whole nother dynamic, because now she or he, depending on that role,
Mhm. Yep.
also has a level of responsibility within the household of faith, in addition to what they do at home as a spouse.
Yeah.
Though it may not be as hefty and as demanding as the pastoral role,
Mhm.
but that leadership role that they're playing in church, whether it is a particular ministry that they're over, or an overall role that they've been given to work alongside their spouse, that
Yes.
there's a certain element that of understanding that has to be. And so that's why it's so important that, again, that spouse is the person that God has brought to you
Yeah.
as this is the one,
Yes.
because everybody can't handle that.
Right. And then I would also
Absolutely.
say that, I don't want people to walk away like we got this perfect, we're perfect.
Far from it.
You have to use wisdom on, if he's had, gone all week or had a long day and I have an issue, sometimes I have to use wisdom on when to get that addressed.
Yeah.
So that we can come together and figure out, okay, you apologizing or am I apologizing? Where we go wrong here?
Love that.
Are we gonna go and do this tomorrow? Okay. But you
Mhm.
have to use wisdom so that the
Yeah.
enemy doesn't gain access to get a 2-for-1 sale. And what
Yep.
I mean by that is, okay, so you're angry and you fire mad over an issue that might be, right, absolutely. But timing is everything. And we've learned that over the years that, wisdom, is your friend when
Yeah.
it's time to address and to make known issues that can help or break your marriage.
Join us
That's
next
good.
week for part 2.